During the break, we were talking about, where do we begin to focus in on? I'd like to, I don't know if the word is dumb it down, but really start at the basics, because a lot of people, when they think of real estate investing, they think of buying a duplex. They think of renting their basement. They think of, renting to students and different things.
Sure.
Whereas commercial, people say, well, what's the difference? Where is commercial different than buying a duplex or, a multi-res type of
I agree.
property?
In fact, I have clients, I prepared an offer today. We've been looking for about 6 weeks. They're looking to buy a $1 million plus executive house in Midtown Toronto. And they're buying that as an investment. It's their third property. All of them are single family residential.
Right.
And that's what it is.
Yep.
I think you're right. There are definitely 3 different categories. As much as people talk about residential versus commercial, there's really single family residential. If you're buying a condo for yourself or as an investment, let's put that aside. We're here to talk about commercial real estate.
That's right. And we can talk plenty about condo investing and pre-construction and all that
I'll come
stuff.
back and talk about that.
Okay.
Under the commercial umbrella, though, there really are 2 distinct categories, amongst other subcategories. There's multi-residential, and then there's purely commercial.
Right.
In purely commercial, there's retail, there are plazas, office, industrial, land, etc.
Right.
The biggest difference, and people often ask me, what should I buy? We just finished our course at U of T last week, and I still had, after 8 weeks, I had some students say, I'm still not sure what I want to buy. I said, well, I explained to you the pros and cons of every different type of property.
Sure.
And they said, so I spent the last class kind of really talking about that, and I told them, look, personally, when people ask me what I personally think, I'm not a huge multi-res guy.
Okay.
And the reason is there are too many cons to the pros. Multi-res, I think, is perfect for larger investors who don't worry too much about the return. They want it to be safe. They want it to be, it's long-term.
Sure.
They won't even, I have some clients who say to me, I don't think about selling myself or my son or my daughter or my grandchildren. I'm thinking 4 or 5 generations down the road. So multi-residential, I think, is really good for people who want safe real estate investments.
Yep.
The beef that I have with multi-residential is that it is the most expensive if you apply a cap rate to it these days.
Yep.
There's the most demand for it. And that demand is because it is steady and stable. You have 20 tenants or 50 tenants or 100 tenants. You have 1 or 2 vacancies, your bottom line's not too affected.
That's right.
So people really like that stability. One of the pros of multi-residential, as you know, is that we can borrow more.
That's true.
Under the right circumstances. Some people do like that. The biggest beef I have is, like I said, it's the most expensive type, and it's also the most management intensive. Multi-residential, I think most people would agree, it's the only type of commercial real estate where the tenant has more power than the landlord.
Yeah, well, in Ontario
absolutely, with the regulations that there are.
Yep.
And we're talking here about commercial real estate, investing in commercial real estate, so I have to look at it from a landlord perspective.
Yep.
I can look at it from a tenant's, but let's talk from landlords.
Absolutely.
The remainder of commercial real estate products, it's really the landlord who's in the driver's seat. If your tenant is not paying and you serve them with notice, there are very clear guidelines. Bailiff goes out, changes the locks, you distrain against their goods, and if you have to, you liquidate them. That doesn't happen very often, but I mean, why do we sign contracts? We sign them for that rainy day or that what if. So that's the reason that I tend to stay away personally from multi-residential.
Okay.
I represent clients every day in that field, and I respect it.
Okay.
It's their opinion.
I guess you touched on the fact that commercial is more of a business. Within commercial, there's multi-res, and of course in commercial there's industrial and all those things, and you certainly identified that. But I think that for a lot of investors, they need to understand the business that they're leasing to.
Sure.
So that is also another greater fear. Most people understand, renting an apartment. I rented when I went to school, so they understand that. Now, what about renting to a store that's only deals with tourism in the tourism industry?
Sure.
So they would look at it and not necessarily understanding the business at all. And then all of a sudden the guy goes out of business after 6 months.
Right.
So I think that a lot of commercial due diligence, if I can use that word,
very good,
would be required to study the business of the leaseholder.
I agree. I think the perfect...
That's a fear, right? Because you don't
very
know
much
the business.
so. Look, if you don't have tenants, you have nothing. And
That's right.
in fact, you have less than nothing because you're paying for the TMI, the taxes, maintenance, and insurance. You're paying for the mortgage payments, the interest.
That's right.
So you have less than nothing without a tenant. I think that the perfect commercial real estate investor is a combination of quasi-prudent analyzer and entrepreneur. My partner, my father, always says, excessive analysis leads to paralysis.
You bet.
And it's very, very true. A lot of the time when we're analyzing a commercial or an income-producing property for our clients, we say, look, if the property looks okay from the pictures, or if you drive by it, if the numbers look okay, let's put in an offer. Yeah. Let's put in a letter of intent. Yeah. Not necessarily deviously trying to tie it up, but let's just get something out there. Yeah. And then we can, in a due diligence condition, be it 15 days, 45 days, or 120 days, we can analyze it.
And I think that the William Buffett approach is don't invest in anything you don't understand.
True.
But we have Jim on the line from Thornhill. Hi, Jim. Thanks for the call. What's your question?
Oh, how you doing, Mark?
Good.
And Claude, or is it Claude or Claude?
You know what? If you can speak French, we'll say Claude. Otherwise, we'll say Claude.
Okay, it's Claude.
Okay, good. Yeah, use the Ontario version.
Yeah. Actually, my question is, as a current owner of industrial properties, what's your personal opinion about older low-rise buildings as industrial?
When you say low-rise, low ceiling heights?
Yeah, low ceiling heights, under 20,000 square feet.
Okay. It depends how low we're getting. I mean, if you're getting into the 9, 10, 11 feet, which I've seen 10 and 11 feet, that's pretty low. Though,
right.
I always like real estate investments where you have a tenant in your pocket. If you were to find a vacant building with a low ceiling height and a user who needs mostly office space, but they want to run a forklift training school or something like that, that's a perfect environment. If you're looking for something that's traditional, warehousing, distribution, logistics, etc., that type of use of industrial, I would say that you should definitely be sticking to 15, 16 feet or more. Though the trend, it sounds like you know what you're talking about, the trend is definitely to go 20, 22, 24 feet or higher of clear ceiling height. I think that you're going to be paying less for the lower ceiling heights, but you're also going to have to understand you may have to carry the property longer if you're buying it vacant in order to find an appropriate tenant.
Right. Now my question is, would the price per square foot be the same on ceiling height, or do you get more per square foot on a ceiling height?
If you're buying something with a higher clear ceiling height, you're usually going to be paying more. That's definitely factored in. We don't go and start analyzing from a cubic foot perspective or anything like that. But you're definitely going to be paying more for clear ceiling height that's high.
Right.
But you are also paying for location. If you have something that's at a wonderful highway interchange in Toronto with a low ceiling height, you may be paying the same money as you are for something that's far Brampton or Mississauga or even outside of there with a higher ceiling height.
Oh, yeah. And I meant also, like, when you go to rent it out, like, say, $5 a square foot, is it $6 a square foot for a higher ceiling height?
Oh, I see. Are you able to command a higher rental price?
Yes.
Definitely. I think that the market can support more. It's going to be a matter of finding the right tenants. I always bemoan the fact that I see some industrial properties that are leased, but you have a 24-foot ceiling and the guy's using shelves that his employees pick from by hand without a reach truck or anything like that. They're using 10 feet. So they're using half of the space that they could be using, and that's an underutilization for sure. If you found the right tenant who needs that height or who can make more money in their business using that height, you will get more per square foot.
Okay.
All right, Jim, thanks for the call. And, it sounds like he's touching on, like anyone, right? They're out looking for commercial property, and they're saying, wow, they see a 1,000 square foot unit for 200,000, and they see a 1,000 square foot unit for 400,000.
Sure.
Well, what the heck's the difference?
I agree.
And so we're really digging into, and Jim, that was an excellent question. The heights.
Sure.
I mean, really, we're renting, industrial space. What do you use industrial? You got trucks going in there, you got forklifts,
Sure.
so you're really paying for the air now.
Absolutely. And that's really one of the reasons that it is a lot of commercial real estate investors like to take a certain type of property and stick to it.
Yes.
Because the learning curve is there initially, or they have a background. I have some clients who invest in industrial. They had a former life in working in an industrial building, so they understand turning radius and truck level doors versus drive-in doors, etc. I think it's important when I think Jim had the right idea. He's definitely thinking before he's buying, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think one of the good things that you should be doing, it's something that we do for a lot of our clients, is if you know you're going to be purchasing a certain type of product in a certain area, do more due diligence before you even start. So for example, some of our clients, like Jim, would ask us, how long is under a 12-foot ceiling height space sitting on the market? How long is under 24 foot? And that's a great indicator of what you can do with it, and what kind of rates, what are the comparables? What's leased in the last year, 2 years, 3 years? It's not the same as in, fancy neighborhoods in Toronto or in other areas where houses every week, every month, the prices change and the comparables change. In industrial real estate, you can look at 6-month or 12-month or 18-month slices and get a pretty good feel for how that area is trending.
Yeah, and you touched on specifics. I mean, there's investors out there that say I only buy condos.
Sure.
There's guys that say I only buy single fam, I only buy duplex. So there's a whole world of multi-res. You can apply the same type of thinking into commercial. And Jim was a good example of. It sounds like he's studying very specific buildings, and he's and again going back to it is once you find a niche, you can make a killing in commercial real estate, because the issue with commercial is. You're not dealing with 80% of the population. You're only dealing with 5 or 10%.
Agreed.
So the old saying is as you climb that pyramid, the air gets a lot clearer. You can see around and say, hey, you know what? There's not a lot of people up here.
Yeah.
And so when you focus in, drill in, and so I guess for some people watching, dig into commercial investing. Look at all the different options, and as you were touching on, the pros and cons between multi-res. Obviously, you're sounding like you're a commercial guy. You're saying, hey, there's way more pros to commercial.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Jim called in about industrial. I find that's one of the types of real estate that's the least understood or desired by small to medium-sized investors. And it's one of my favorite, actually, because the way that industrial leases are typically written, they are some of the most carefree leases for a landlord. Isn't it nice to have a lease that says the tenant shall, X breaks down, Y gets old, maintenance isn't done, it's the tenant's responsibility. That's pretty darn nice as a landlord.
And the other thing about industrial is that the actual building construction is as simple as it gets.
Indeed.
Concrete pad, steel girders, steel roof, bing bang boom. It's a big square block.
Sure.
And so because a home, you've got all the plumbing and you got a toy. I mean, you still have the basics of an industrial, but it's really like concrete. It's just everything is just straight ahead.
And these buildings are pretty versatile a lot of the time. When I'm looking at industrial properties as investments for my clients, I'm looking at what can we do if it doesn't work as pure industrial with 24-foot ceilings. What's the answer? You can cut it up with a mezzanine. You can add 2 stories that can be used normally. You can put office into it. A lot of the industrial spaces that I lease, the office space ebbs and flows or grows, expands and contracts based on the tenant. The office space is actually built into the industrial space with a drop ceiling. And if the next tenant says, I need all industrial and no office or 1% office space, they demolish it and it's all industrial again. So there's some good flexibility there. The one thing I want to mention while we're on industrial is most small to medium-sized investors feel like it's out of their reach. They're thinking 50, 100, 300,000 square foot buildings, got millions and millions of dollars. Yes, that's a lot of what's happening, but you can start small. You can start with a small standalone building with 2 or 3 or 4 units. Go ahead.
Claude, I was just going to say, I don't mean to cut you off. We'll continue with that later. Take a quick break on your money and real estate. Be right back on commercial investing. Hey there, welcome back to Your Money in Real Estate. We're again picking up on commercial investing. We've got some books here. For anyone with questions, we've had some excellent questions already on commercial, because commercial is a vast, unknown, really, it's not explored. When you walk around chapters, you don't see a lot of books like this. So
that's very true.
So that's why Claude's book is really good. We're going to get into what I always say is the best part of the show, which is the whiteboard. And during the break, Claude, we were talking about what could we give some really meat and potatoes to someone looking at a commercial investment. And last week we talked about cap rates.
Right.
So why don't you walk me through here, and I think I know what to do here. We're going to do a comparison, right?
Yeah. So what I thought it'd be interesting to talk about is, as a realtor, I see this every day, literally, and we have clients who say, I like this property, can you get me more information? We contact the seller or the listing agent, and we say, okay, can you send us some income and expenses? So they'll send us some income, and then they'll send us some expenses, but only some expenses most of the time. So we end up with a net operating income, or NOI, of X, and we end up with an asking cap rate of, say, 7%. Well, by the time we hammer away at it and discover all these additional expenses that were left out voluntarily or not,